contracts, their ability to do business with Treasury and the IRS.
But there is no contribution into this particular case.
Again, Senator, you weren't here earlier, but I'm unable to discuss most of this because of ongoing litigation.
Yeah, I know everybody likes to say that, but the constitutional...
We like to follow the law, Senator.
And the law is that the Congress has constitutional...
Welcome back to Freedom Forge, the channel where we stand for accountability, transparency, and the principles that made America the greatest nation on earth. If you believe government officials should answer tough questions instead of hiding behind excuses, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of the biggest political battles in Washington. Today's Senate hearing focused on a highly controversial issue involving the Treasury Department, the IRS, and questions surrounding an agreement related to tax audits and investigations connected to President Trump and his businesses. Senators questioned Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent over whether there was any precedent for such an agreement, whether any compensation was sought from the contractor responsible for leaking hundreds of thousands of confidential tax records, and whether the government gave special treatment in exchange for any settlement. The hearing quickly became a heated clash over transparency, executive accountability, and the limits of congressional oversight.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks very much. Secretary, welcome. Have you identified any precedent in Treasury or IRS history for the agreement not to audit, investigate, or pursue any tax claims against the Trump family or businesses?
I can't identify any precedent where 400,000 tax returns, including the people you just mentioned and all of their employees, were leaked in a violation of one of the most sacred duties of the IRS.
So let me cut
privacy,
to that then.
Senator.
The leak was by a contractor. Can you tell me what contribution is being sought by Treasury or by the IRS for the harm done by the contractor? To a certain extent, your organization and the IRS are the victim of the contractor's malfeasance or negligence. What is being pursued by way of contribution by that contractor?
Well, the ranking member chastised me for cutting the contractor's contracts off, and we have removed their contracts, their ability to do business with Treasury and the IRS.
But there is no contribution into this particular case.
Again, Senator, you weren't here earlier, but I'm unable to discuss most of this because of ongoing litigation.
Yeah, I know everybody likes to say that, but the constitutional...
We like to follow the law, Senator.
And the law is that the Congress has constitutional oversight functions that do not disappear simply because there is litigation, however convenient it may be, by way of providing answers. So we have no precedent for it. No contribution is being sought from the contractor at fault. Was there any consideration to the government in return for the benefits of no audit, no investigation, no challenge or pursuit of refunds or other penalties?
Again, Senator, I'm unable to comment because of litigation. Treasury is represented by the Department of Justice in all matters. They act as our attorneys, so I would suggest that you direct your questions to Acting Attorney General Blanche.
Yeah, well, I've had a lot of times people who are before us invite me to ask my questions of somebody who's not before us, but you're the one who is before us, and I think you ought to know if there was any consideration offered or paid in return for that settlement. It's a very simple fact question. Was there or was there not consideration?
Again, there's ongoing litigation, and I suggest that you speak with the Treasury attorneys.
If this kind of behavior is okay with the chairman, I'll just pursue other questions. But what goes around comes around in terms of dodging questions.
I believe it's very clear that witnesses of any kind cannot discuss ongoing litigation.
They can certainly discuss a fact that they are aware of. The fact that there is some litigation out there doesn't mean that a witness can't say, yeah, there was no consideration, or yes, there was consideration. Was there a defense analysis memo? It's referenced in the judge's decision in Florida. Was there a defense analysis memo prepared by the IRS? And more specifically, did you see it?
Again, I'm not going to be able to comment on these matters.
Mr. Chairman, this just makes no sense at all. I've been a lawyer all my life. I have some idea of what is protected when you have a ongoing bit of litigation. Whether this individual has seen an official memo from within his own department is a very simple question to answer. And I think it's completely inappropriate to have this game of dodgem be pursued without any consequences. Well, last of all, here's another question. Was there any analysis of what harm befell President Trump from having his taxes released when every president since Nixon released their taxes and he had promised to? Did anybody analyze whether there was actually any harm at all to him in those circumstances?
So there was a crime. President's rights under 6103 of the IRS code was violated, and equally as important, 400,000 taxpayers had that right violated, including every employee of the Trump administration, the housekeepers at Doral, the greenskeepers, the cashiers.
And you're welcome to pursue all of
seem
that,
to care.
but it doesn't answer the question of whether the president actually suffered harm. And you're not answering that question either.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Now let's talk about what really happened here. One thing that stood out immediately was the repeated refusal to answer direct, factual questions. Instead of providing straightforward responses, the Secretary continually pointed to ongoing litigation as the reason he could not discuss the matter. Now everyone understands that legal proceedings can limit certain disclosures. But there is also a difference between protecting legal strategy and refusing to answer simple factual questions before Congress. The senator repeatedly asked whether there was any precedent for such an arrangement. Instead of receiving a clear answer, the discussion shifted toward the massive IRS leak involving approximately 400,000 tax returns. Let's be honest here. The leak itself was one of the largest breaches of taxpayer confidentiality in American history. Millions of Americans expect that their private financial information will remain protected by the government. Whether someone is Donald Trump or an ordinary working-class citizen, those records are protected under federal law. From a conservative perspective, that should outrage every American. If the government cannot protect something as sensitive as tax records, what confidence should citizens have that their personal information is secure? Secretary Bessent repeatedly emphasized that point, reminding lawmakers that the leak affected not only President Trump, but hundreds of thousands of taxpayers, employees, contractors, workers, and ordinary citizens whose private information was exposed without permission. That is a fair point. Privacy under the law should apply equally to everyone. But here's where many Americans watching this hearing may become frustrated. Congress has oversight responsibilities. Senators have the constitutional duty to ask questions about government decisions, settlements, and agreements involving taxpayer money and federal agencies. When simple questions receive the same response over and over again, ongoing litigation, it naturally creates suspicion among the public. People begin asking themselves whether information is being withheld because of legal necessity or political convenience. That perception damages public trust. One of the biggest moments came when Senator Whitehouse questioned whether there had been any consideration exchanged for the apparent agreement not to pursue certain audits or tax claims involving the Trump family or businesses. The Secretary refused to answer. Again and again and again. Instead, he suggested directing questions to Treasury attorneys or the Department of Justice. Now think about that from the average American's perspective. The official sitting before Congress is being asked direct questions about actions involving his own department, yet repeatedly tells lawmakers to ask someone else. Whether that is legally justified or not, politically it does not inspire confidence. At the same time, conservatives should not ignore another major issue highlighted during this hearing. The IRS leak itself deserves far more attention than it has received. If this had involved another political figure from the opposite party, many in the media would likely be demanding investigations around the clock. Instead, the discussion often shifts away from the actual crime of exposing confidential taxpayer information. Federal law exists for a reason. Tax records are among the most private documents any citizen possesses. Weaponizing government information for political purposes would represent an enormous abuse of power if allowed to become normalized. The Secretary also reminded the committee that the contractor responsible had already lost government contracts. But Senator Whitehouse pushed further, asking whether the contractor would contribute financially toward the damage caused. Again, no direct answer. This exchange highlights a much larger problem in Washington. Government accountability often seems selective. When agencies make mistakes, taxpayers frequently pay the price while bureaucrats hide behind legal processes that take years to resolve. Americans deserve better than endless procedural answers. They deserve transparency. Another fascinating exchange involved whether President Trump actually suffered measurable harm from the tax leak. The senator pointed out that many presidents voluntarily release their tax returns, suggesting that perhaps there was little actual damage. The Secretary rejected that framing completely. His argument centered on the fact that regardless of whether information eventually becomes public voluntarily, unauthorized disclosure remains illegal. That principle is actually very important. Rights protected by law do not disappear simply because someone later chooses to reveal information voluntarily. If your bank leaks your financial records today, the violation does not become acceptable simply because you later post your statements online. The same principle should apply to tax information. Whether Americans support Donald Trump or oppose him politically, constitutional protections and federal privacy laws must apply equally. That is one of the foundational principles of equal justice under law. The hearing also revealed the growing frustration between Congress and executive agencies. Senators increasingly complain that witnesses avoid difficult questions by citing investigations or litigation. Officials argue they are simply following legal advice. The result is that oversight hearings often produce more political theater than actual accountability. The American people are left wondering who is telling the truth. As conservatives, we should consistently support transparency regardless of political party. If government officials make agreements affecting tax enforcement, Congress should understand those agreements. If taxpayer information is illegally leaked, those responsible should face serious consequences. If agencies fail to protect confidential records, reform should follow. And if officials appear before Congress, they should answer every question they legally can instead of defaulting to carefully rehearsed talking points. The health of our republic depends on institutions that citizens trust. That trust is earned through openness, accountability, and equal application of the law. Whether the subject is Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or any ordinary American taxpayer, the same rules should apply. That is what justice looks like. This hearing leaves many unanswered questions, and it is likely that more information will emerge as litigation continues. But one lesson is already clear. Americans are tired of government officials passing responsibility to someone else while refusing to provide straightforward answers. Washington works for the people, not the other way around. And when Congress asks questions on behalf of taxpayers, the American people deserve answers. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more patriotic analysis of the biggest political showdowns happening in Washington, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Freedom Forge, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Secretary was right to remain silent because of ongoing litigation, or should Congress have received direct answers? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next one.